I'm really excited about sharing this vast amount of amazing information. And I think for a lot of you, it's going to be like what is going on here situation. A number of years ago, I really started studying coconut, and this is probably going back about 20 years ago now, and the health benefits of coconut oil. And that really came from having, my daughter who's 23, 24 now, and how she was having seizures in her high chair, which really kind of sparked my interest in the therapeutic use of the ketogenic diet. Prior to that, I'd been using it in weight loss for a few years, and actually for many years, but really kind of was trained in kind of the ketogenic diet, I guess, in my early career as a weight loss tool. And of course, when Zoe came along and I started seeing my child having neurological problems, that really kind of sent me down the whole pathway of, oh, this isn't just a weight loss tool. This is a tool for metabolic health and for brain health. And so along those years of raising her as a child, I was so passionate about nutrition because everything I was putting into her body, I used to call her my human petri dish. And I think, I did basically 15 years of experimenting on her, particularly the first 10, because she was so reactive to everything I was putting in her body. So I became one of those real passionate, nothing like a mother with a mission, those mothers. And so as I developed that, my weight loss business, my coaching business, kind of morphed into a nutrition school called Whole Food Secrets, which I ran from home and worked around my children's schedule so I could be there as a mum, which really morphed into kind of a lot of education, particularly back then, around the damaging effects of gluten primarily, and food colorings and food additives and sugars. And so over the years working with her, I had to really come up with kind of what was the ideal diet to keep this otherwise calm, beautiful, attentive child in the world. Because later, it wasn't until her late teens, and I kind of suspected this, but I never wanted to pigeonhole her or label her. That kind of wasn't a conscious thing to do back then. I was really aware of her high functioning ADHD. But for the education system later in her school career, I had to put her through psychological educational testing, and it came out that she was in the 98th percentile for ADHD, and particularly the attention. Now, don't get me wrong, this child can hyper-focus. Her IQ is 157, so there wasn't a problem with intelligence. It was, is this interesting enough to me to want to put my attention on a kind of situation? But as a young child, particularly sugars and grains, gluten, dairy, were really major trigger foods for her. So when I was studying all of this over the years, I really understood a massive depth, and came to accumulate a massive depth of knowledge about the gut, what we're feeding our body, the impacts on every cell in our body, and obviously what it's doing to the brain. We have this gut-brain axis. So every food we're putting into our digestive system is basically the information that we are sending to every cell. So what I am so grateful about, and why I was her mother, and we wouldn't be here if this never happened, is that I really delved into the gut microbiome, the effects of the brain, the enteric nervous system, chemicals in food, what's going on with our diets today, why is there such a rise in cancer and heart disease and hyperactivity and mental illness, all these different conditions, which upon my research, I discovered that these are called modern diseases, right? And so in studying the history of food, human evolution, our diets, how we've evolved, that became really such a foundation for my programs, because we have not evolved as a species to cope with the very fast evolution from the food industrial evolution of how our food has been taken and processed, denatured, and turned into commodities in fancy boxes on the supermarket shelves that our body doesn't even really recognize. So during this time in studying traditional diets and studying fats, of course, what came up was this massive exploration into the myth around fats, what we've been told about fat. We've grown up in generations where fat is bad. We grew up in the food pyramid era with all the grains at the bottom. Even today, somebody like me, a 50-year-old woman, is supposed to have between 6 and 11 servings of grains a day, according to the food pyramid. And the food pyramid was never designed with human nutrition in mind. It was designed by the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture, to support the grain growers. Now, fat plays a massive role in all the lies and myths that we've been told about nutrition. So I want to share with you the history of coconut and fats and how we got to the position we're in today, and currently where we're at, and what the probable future is right now. And I want to ask you for your help to support this massive mission that I'm on and a whole group of other people are on, to save this very important resource, not only for nutrition health, metabolic health, neurological health, because the research is very clear. Coconut oils are incredibly powerful producers of ketone bodies. So we always have ketones in our body, whether we're on a ketogenic diet or not. It is a fuel source that is always present in the body in trace amounts for people that aren't metabolically flexible. And the reason why that's there is because the brain really loves ketones, and different parts of our body's cells love ketones. And so this food source that our ancestors have thrived on has been a massive producer of ketone bodies. And when we look at traditional diets before the sugar revolution, and the supermarkets, I think the first supermarket opened in 1936, and just how our food supply has changed over the last 100 years, we can really start kind of piecing together why it is now we're in this obesity and metabolic health crisis. And basically, you know, if you want to know the truth about anything, you follow the dollar. So what happened was coconut oil was really planted over 100 years ago, a couple of hundred years ago, by the colonials in different regions around the world. And it fast took over the number one source of nutritional fats around the world, replacing whale fat and beef tallow. And the reason for that is it was productive, and it cooked well, it produced amazing food, and it was easily distributed, and there was enough supply to go around. Now, during World War II, what happened when the Japanese invaded the Pacific, the supply chains between the South Pacific and Indonesia and India were cut off. So all of a sudden we've got, let's focus on America here for a moment, we've got, you know, millions of people that were going on through food rations. And so as part of the war effort, the governments stepped in and they had to replace our oils. And so during World War II, there was this massive influx, and this was really the birth of the original soy plantations and sunflower plantations and the very beginning of seed-based oils. And so during that time, of course, there were lobbyists and advertisers telling us how good it was because, hey, we were stuck in our ways. We knew how to cook with coconut oil. And now all of a sudden we're being told, oh, we can't have that. So now here's the seed oil. So there was a massive amount of advertising going into replacing this. And then what happened when World War II ended, and this is fascinating, of course, those regions that were had relied on this massive commodity and resource for their income, they tried to reestablish themselves in those marketplaces and were pushed out and forced out because all of a sudden we had highly producing, profitable crops. And so this was really the beginning of the war on fat. And so now we can piece together what happened at a government level. Now the story, and I could talk for hours on this, I'm not going to get into the full details of this, but the long story short is that now we were like, we want our coconut oil back. So they created stories and a hypothesis that vegetable oils were better for human health than the coconut producing oil, which contains 4 medium chain triglycerides. One of them, which is 50% of the oil, is lauric acid. And lauric acid is very, very high in saturated fat. So now we come into the whole fat myth and the birth of why we were told by the American Heart Foundation, connect the dots of who they're connected with in terms of the Grain Growers Association. And now we have this story being told to us that saturated fat is bad, it's causing heart disease, and it was considered a non-essential fat for the human body because our body produces cholesterol. So we didn't need saturated fat in our diet because they linked that to cholesterol production. And they said, well, the body produces it anyway, and we've got to drive down cholesterol. Cholesterol's bad. Well, actually, that's been disproven. And now we're in a situation where we still, in today's society, have generations, particularly older generations, that haven't come up to speed that saturated fat has never had any scientific data or evidence or any research to prove that it causes heart disease, that it is actually damaging in any way. In fact, what has come out of that research is the link between sugars, of which we are having thousands of times more sugar in our diet than we used to 100 years ago. In fact, the average person today on a reasonable diet is having equivalent to a pound of sugar a week. In some places, it is far more than that. And you add that up over an amount of time. And now what we know is that it is sugar and grains that are driving up inflammation in the body. And in response to the rise of inflammation from sugar and glucose and carbohydrates and insulin spikes, the body does something to protect itself, and that is that it produces cholesterol to protect itself. So that's one side of it. The other side is that every cell on your body is required to have cholesterol to create the lining of the cells. Every part of our body actually needs cholesterol. So cholesterol is not bad. We've been told that it's bad for a long, long time. And the reason for that is really the lobbyists trying to convince us to get rid of saturated fats and to move towards the vegetable and seed oils because it's healthy for us. So here's another piece to this puzzle when it comes to health and how wrong this information is. Traditional diets consisted of a nice healthy balance between omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids. And so the traditional ratios used to be 1 part omega-6 to either 1 part omega-3 or 1 part omega-6 in some regions to 2 parts omega-3. Now, all of a sudden, we've got this massive amount of omega-3 coming into our diets based on the oils we were told to consume, and also based on the amount of grains we're now consuming. So today, we don't have this fat balance, this ideal ratio for health, which we know is 1-to-1 or 1-to-2. So, we're supposed to really keep that in check. And now, in some diets, you look at the standard American diet today, the ratio is now 1 to, on average, 30. So omega-6 is about 30 times to omega-3. Now, when we have this fat imbalance, what it does is it drives up inflammation. So coming back to understanding that the body's response to inflammation is to produce cholesterol to protect itself. What are we doing? You know? And so this is really the early story about how these oils that our grandparents and great-grandparents thrived on were replaced. So it was all to do with supply chains and basically money. So here we are now, and there hasn't been any significant replanting of coconut since World War II, or since before World War II. And so we're really at a crisis point. And the reason why this is so important is not only how much land and green space from an environmental perspective that coconut plantations consist of, which is around 12 million hectares of land, but also it's the farmers and it's the communities and how this is impacting them. So most of the coconut is produced by smallholder farmers. They have around between 1 and 3 hectares of land on average. And that coconut is basically turned into a product called copra, where they take the coconut, they will sun dry it, or they will kiln dry it, which is very dangerous, and basically it's a slave trade. And I want you to imagine for a moment that you're a woman in her 60s. The average farmer would be between 60 and 65 that is now farming coconut because of the unsustainability and the economic collapse of the industry, which I'm going to get to shortly. All the young people are no longer working the land, so they're off working in tourism and making money, sending money back to the village to support the families and the communities. So the elderly are left to farm the land. So imagine being 65 and you are basically having to walk, and gather the coconut. You then have to process it and cut it and kiln dry it under extreme heat. And then you take that bag of coconut. If you're lucky, you might get a sack of coconut a day, and you might have to walk miles and miles to the traders, to the markets, where you are now dealing with patriarchal middlemen, and they will give you $1 if you're lucky for that sack, right? If you're lucky. Then that copra is then taken to the shipping docks, and most of it goes to Holland. So think about the food mile print that's starting to accumulate. And once it reaches Holland, it is mostly turned into commodities, surfactants, the stuff that we like to brush our teeth and get the bubbles, and we like bubbly shampoos. So, and detergents and things like that. So that's where most of that coconut is going. And some of it is turned into oils, refined oils that you're seeing on the supermarket shelves. So the problem with this is that the industry right now is dominated by the middleman and by the multinational food corporations and chemical producers. And those companies are not interested in sustainability. I'm going to get to some of the smoke and mirrors shortly about what you're seeing out there in terms of some of the initiatives for sustainability, because there's myths around those. And they are not sending the profits back to the farms. Now, these coconut trees that haven't been replanted since World War II or before, we have a dying forests of 12 million hectares all around the world now, that 60 to 70% of those trees are senile and dead and non-productive. And there is not enough money to go back to the farmers who are already living in poverty. Coconut farmers are amongst the poorest farmers in the world. There's around 680 million of them, of these farms. 680 million farms. between 1 and 5 hectares. Half of those farms are owned by landlords, which immediately cuts the profits in half, because the profits go 50% goes back to the landlord, 50% for the farmer. And most of the people working that land are women in these regions. And these women are also having to run the communities, run the homes, figure out how to get the children to school. Then they've got to process this product. It's a slave industry. It really, really is right now, because there's not enough money going to the people that need it. So now we've got this massive economic collapse, because the multinational corporations, the supermarket chains, these supply chains are so long that the profits get diluted down and down and down and down, further and further, so that we're talking about poverty line here. And there is no incentive now for the next generation of farmers to come in and look after these farms. Now, one of the reasons this is so important is that coconut is the most incredible agricultural product in the world. And it's also a canopy crop, which all of these regions rely on for shade, so that they can grow other products underneath, their staple foods, their turmeric, their gingers, a lot of them grow in Indonesia, cacao and coffee, which they then can make money from. They grow rice to feed the village, corn in some regions. There are a number of things. It's a magical plant. There's 12 meters between each plant. So there's a lot of land to be able to create food forests in. And if we can support these farms to create these food products by buying these products and cutting out all these middlemen and these big greedy food corporations that are raping and pillaging our planet, destroying our ecosystems and our wildlife, and we can support them to create these regenerative farms, then they're going to be able to profit more from each part of their land, each square acre of their land, right? And that's what I'm really deeply passionate about helping, because not only that, if we can make this sustainable, we're able to build communities again. I'm a spokesperson for Coconut Knowledge Centre, and this is a not-for-profit organization which is bringing together a lot of people that are really passionate about all of the wonderful things that coconut can do for the world, the environment, the people, and the planet. Another side of this, coming back to the plant itself, is that every single plant of that tree, the regions where it's grown in, it's referred to as the tree of life. And it very much is for these communities. And the reason why it's called the tree of life is that every single part of it can be utilized. So, we understand coconut water, the sexy sports drink, and, the consumers in the West kind of only understand a small part of this. So we understand coconut water. Then we take the flesh and we can produce the oils from the flesh, these amazing life force giving oils that are extremely anti-inflammatory, neuroprotective, and really help balance that fat imbalance within our bodies. So they're driving down inflammation. And then we can take the shell and we can turn that shell into a renewable energy source. Then we can take the husk and we can turn that into bedding and into biocarbon and other products that are extremely good for the environment. Then we can take the tree itself, and that's a hardwood. And there are enough trees just in Indonesia alone to build 7 million new homes. Now, the problem that we've got right now is because the farmers are basically giving up. We've got these dying trees. We've got hundreds of thousands of hectares in various regions all around the world. We're talking millions in total of dead, dying trees. We can't just go into those regions and cut the trees down. and leave them to rot, because there is an issue with something called dung beetle, which basically destroys the land. So these trees have to be removed sustainably, which generally means we need to put processing plants close to where they are, ideally in the forestries themselves. And then we can produce these amazing, so many different architectural products and roof tiles. And there are hundreds of amazing people all around the world that have come up with ways of using this resource that's just sitting there. So there needs to be a new economic model. The current economic model was really put in place through control by multinational traders, food corporations, and chemical industries. And basically, we are still in a situation where not only is this, for many farmers, a slave industry, but these are the people buying from them today, and they're saying, no, we're just going to pay you that, take it or leave it. So they're in desperate situations. And so let's get to what's happening with the initiatives from these corporations. And this is really interesting. And, I'd love to be really hopeful and really believe that they've stepped in to try and help, but I'm extraordinarily skeptical. There are initiatives such as Follow the Frog, and you will start seeing Follow the Frog on various products. And it really is an initiative to help, secure ethical supply chains and take care of our farmers. And one of the reasons I'm skeptical is that this has been created by the very companies and the greed, of the people that have caused the problem in the first place, the devastation, right? So, okay, we'll just sit back and watch and see what happens here. But it's not enough. We can't rely on a solution created by the people that are basically putting a stamp on it, telling you, the consumer, oh, we're ethical. Here's our stamp. You can trust us. The issue isn't going to be solved just on that, even if there is some sort of ethical rules put in place, right? Because still, we're talking about long supply chains where the profits are going offshore, right? To line the billionaires' pockets instead of going back to the people that need it, so that we can make this a sustainable product, so that we can rebuild communities, so that they can thrive, so that we can protect this incredible green resource for our planet. And so the only solution here really is to work with people that are working directly with the farmers and these communities, so that we can pay the same amount of money for the product as we would in the supermarket, yet where's the profit going? It's going to an incredible initiative of rebuilding communities. And we're talking about building infrastructures, building schools, education, healthcare. There are so many initiatives that are relying on this to happen. Otherwise, the other alternative, of which we are at risk of right now, because we've been in crisis for the last 25 to 30 years, and we're going to reach a tipping point where there is no coconut on your shelves, because guess what? Bill Gates is buying up the farmland and investing enormous money into fake meat. And so these fake meats and these plant-based proteins and this massive rise in that, guess what? They are expected to consume about 30% of the current supply of coconut to produce these fake meats. So where do you think that 30% is going to come from when there's already a limited supply? They're going to pay more for it than your supermarket and all those traders to get it to the supermarket, right? And so we're going to have it off our shelves and it's going to be turned over there. And this is very clever if you're a billionaire and you want to dominate the food supply, because we're going to make it so impossible for farmers. And so all of a sudden we've got billions of hectares of land waiting like a sitting duck to be bowled and turned into monoculture grain crops, which are already killing us. We are not designed as a species to have grains in our diet, full stop, let alone the oils that they're telling us that are good for us. This is not in any way, shape, or form going to have a good outcome for our health when over the last 100 years, it's already destroyed human metabolic health. We have the first generation of children now that have a lower life expectancy than we do. We've got 1 in 2 children dealing with insulin resistance and diabetes in America. Well, what is the life expectancy and the quality of life and everything based on that? Because of how we have allowed our food system to go. So it's time that we all stood back and took a really good look at the big picture here. 90% of the world's supply and food chains are owned by 9 companies. 9 corporations control what you eat. They control what you eat. And when we understand where food and nutrition and where things are going, it's devastating. And it's not just that, it's the land itself. Because while we have GMO, genetically modified ingredients, which are known to be hormone disruptors, neurotoxic, carcinogenic to the human body, of which there are thousands of them in the supermarket that you can go and buy and get addicted to, right? They're degrading your health. And those crops are destroying and creating barren lands. You know, most of the land in California is dead. There is no organisms in there. So what's the alternative? There is an alternative, and it's been proven to be an effective alternative, and that is to move toward regenerative farming, where we're feeding the enzymes and the nutrients right back into the soil, so the worms and the wildlife and the insects can go and we can pull, you know, we can get the carbon and we can get, you know, all of that stuff. And so I'm passionate about not only organic farming and sustainable farming, not only for our environment, but for our human health, for the future of this planet, and for our children and grandchildren. Otherwise, what are we leaving behind? The reason I got into coconut, as I said earlier, was because of my daughter's neurological health, and then spending 30 years of my career really understanding nutritional ketosis, the benefits of ketones, and then tying that back to how important coconut oil is for our diets. It really is a superfood, and we need to be conscious of not only its health benefits, but where we're sourcing it from. You know, I really believe that we vote with our dollar. Every time we spend a dollar, we're voting for the world we want to live in. We're choosing to support the greed, to support the rape and pillage of our lands, because what, we want to save a dollar? Or we're choosing for the future of sustainability and health for the people and our planet and for our future generations. And so coconut in itself, to me, is something that I'm driven deeply with a sense of purpose to help, particularly women, farmers. You know, women are my life. I'm here to serve women, but also the male farmers. But it is really about creating social enterprise businesses, which I really believe is the new initiative in business. We have to have a social enterprise philosophy for business to become sustainable for us and for the planet. And they talk about the 3 Ps in social enterprise. That is people, planet, profit. You have to have profit to make that loop sustainable, for it to thrive and for it to grow. And when the profit is being drained out, we don't have the people looked after or the planet. So that's why I'm moving more and more in my life purpose, and this is definitely going to be my retirement job one day, is to really help this initiative as much as I can, to help educate as many people as I can, to help solve this problem. And it really comes down to, if we can connect the consumer to the farm, that direct, we are cutting out all the middlemen, and we're able to make it a viable resource moving forward. So that's why a number of years ago, I met Hagen, who created Coconut Knowledge Center. He is known globally as Mr. Coconut. He sat in the room with Nestle and, all those, Unilever and all those companies. And he's very well knowledged in the palm oil industry and, all of these things, the commodities industries and all of that. And he's really passionate about this product because there is no tree like it on the planet that can do so much for every single part of it and everything that grows under it. It's an incredible resource. So a number of years ago, he started lobbying governments in Indonesia and Southeast Asia to protect their heritage trees, because we know they're dying. And I guess a lot of those regions, they're not really forward thinking. And he could not convince them, he and a whole group of people, to set up a genome project to protect them. So he was involved in one of the first independently owned genome projects, where they've been taking the coconut trees and protecting them. And not only that, they are creating nurseries to start growing the seedlings. And so one of the initiatives that I'm really passionate about is being able to buy those seedlings and give them to the farmers, right? So there's a lot of stuff going on to be able to kind of solve this problem. It's a big vision. It's a big mission. It's not going to take one person. It's going to take all of us, including you as the consumer, to be conscious of this and to understand that while coconut is an incredible health source, it's become trendy to a point, particularly when we talk about MCT oil. When I was in California living there, I'd go into the health stores and MCT oil was nearly in every second product. Now, you're going to be shocked to know that MCT oil is one of the most toxic oils to the human body. It is, and where it came from was, there are 4 medium chain triglycerides in coconut oil, right? As I said earlier, lauric acid constitutes half of the coconut oil. And lauric acid is the component of coconut oil that solidifies in cold climates. So around the equator, no problem. It's warm enough. Your oil's going to stay in oil, right? Now you bring that to the northern and southern hemispheres now, and it's winter, and all of a sudden we've got this hard coconut oil. Not so cool. So a number of years ago, and I'm not going to mention names here, but somebody decided, why don't we just remove the lauric acid so we've got a liquid oil that is far easier for us to consume and just easier to become an ingredient in a commodity. And so what they did was they took the original chemical processing where they were removing the lauric acid to turn it into a liquid for our surfactants, our shampoos, our conditioners, all of those sorts of products that we were seeing, our dishwashing liquid, soaps. And so there was a massive chemical process to be able to strip out lauric acid. So this very clever person thought, if I just modify that by 1 degree, we can make it consumable. And that's what they did. And I can tell you now, MCT oil, if you understood the chemical processing that it goes through, it is not a whole food. It is not a health product. And that's why when you consume too much, what happens? You vomit. It's a gut irritant. Your body doesn't know what to do with that. It's so refined to the point it's frightening. And we've got all the vegan yoga girls and boys, all these healthy type people jumping on the bandwagon of this trend. Have you had your bulletproof coffee today with your MCT oil in it? You know, and it's toxic to the body. It's ridiculous. So there's a whole kind of movement towards these products that are actually coming from copra, coming from the crop and the trade and the supply chain that is actually destroying these industries, these communities, and this incredible, valuable resource for our people and our product and our health. So a number of years ago when I met Hagen, I said to him, I met him at my one of my best friends, Kamur. Those of you that have been on retreat with me in Bali would have met Kamur and Victor. On her 40th birthday, I met this man, Hagen. He's actually a New Zealander that lives primarily in Indonesia, and he's spending a lot of time in the island of Flores, which I'm deeply passionate about. I'm probably going to build a retreat center there one day. It is this massive plantation of beautiful coconut trees where there's endangered elephants, there's all these endangered species and wildlife, turtles, and it's just the most beautiful part of the world that's very undeveloped and off the radar. It's about an hour flight from Bali. And so he, you know, I wanted coconut. I meet Mr. Coconut. So over the last several years, we started working together to create the DMHK range, the Deborah Murta Healthy Kitchen range. And we had our first lot come out prior to COVID lockdown, right? And so during the last few years, we haven't really, or last year particularly, we haven't really had a supply. So I'm really excited to announce that we have our supply back. It's in with our distributors. And at this stage, I know we're definitely able to supply through New Zealand and Australia. And from what I understand, we're going to be able to ship worldwide. At this stage, it's more of a shipping cost. And the vision, obviously, is to have a supply chain set up and distributors set up in the Northern Hemispheres. But we're not quite there at that level yet. So we need your help to be able to cut out the middleman, support all of these amazing initiatives and you're not going to pay any more than you will for the supermarket product. We're just going to ask you to pay for some shipping. And you're going to get the satisfaction of knowing that you are literally voting for and supporting so many initiatives and people that really need this. The one thing I didn't mention about the coconut tree is that there are sugars in the coconut tree, which we ferment into the vinegar ranges. And what's amazing about that is the coconut cider vinegar contains all of the essential amino acids. Apple cider vinegar can't make that claim, but coconut cider vinegar can. It's it's far more superior to apple cider vinegar, and it tastes better. So I'm really passionate about helping the world understand the health benefits of that over that. The balsamic vinegar that we have I have had the most amazing accolade chefs try this and have never tasted anything like it on the planet, to the point that I invested out of my own pocket last year in 1,000 liters of the balsamic vinegar that is now in wine barrels aging. Because I'd love to turn this into a product where it can win a gold award at the Food Awards. That's my goal, and I believe it's possible. So I'm going to be buying, a bit of coconut, balsamic every year and aging it, and it really is just an incredible product. And also our amino acids, our amino source, which is the way of tarting up a quick meal in 5 seconds. The flavor in it is just incredible. So, and of course, all the health benefits that come from these products. So those products are produced by a women's co-op in the Philippines, which is amazing. And so anything that I do, I'm going to be extending my range over time as we can afford to do it, is really for me to be focused on the the social enterprise, you know, the co-ops, what initiatives can we support so that they thrive and we thrive? And when we're not further out of pocket than we would be, you know, buying the products that have gone through these long supply chains where there's nothing going back to the people that need it. So I'm going to put a link here somewhere to our products, where we've got 5 products. We've got the coconut oil, the virgin oil. Now, I have a jar of that everywhere in my house. I'm single at the moment, so, you know, there used to be one next to the bed. But anyway, you can use it for that. You can use it to brush your teeth. I put it in my hair once a week and leave it in overnight and then wash it out. I used it, you know, when I was a mother and didn't have any cash flow forever. I used it as a moisturizer and cleanser. I still use it as a cleanser to get makeup off. I used it as my only moisturizer up until a few years ago. Now I use something else. I'll tell you about that another time, but I've kind of gone to more aged care. I got to the point where I had to start taking better care. So I do use Environs. You'll ask me what it is. So I use Environs, and I use a therapeutic range of that. But anyway, back to that coconut oil and moisturizer. And also it's got a natural SPF of 10. It is actually quite protective of the sun. You're not going to come down to New Zealand and lie here with a big hole in the ozone layer and, you know, sunbathe in it. Although we did in high school. You might have been one of those girls, bathe yourself in coconut oil and tan yourself black. But it can be used for so many things. So we've got that. And I've upped the size of the jar of the cooking oil now. And I want to start, you know, showing you some quick videos as I'm cooking. I'll start showing you what to do, how to use it instead of a vegetable oil for cooking, because there is no way in hell you should have any vegetable oils in your house. That means when you start reading the labels, you can't buy, unless you're buying elite products, top shelf, any kind of salad dressing or mayonnaise that isn't full of GMOs or really high omega-6 fatty acids that are going to increase your inflammation and cause illness. So we have to kind of start changing our relationship with how we put fat into our diet. And, you know, it's easy to do once you know how to do it. So I have the larger jars now of the cooking oil, which has had the flavor removed. So sometimes I don't want to cook a steak and have flavor of the coconut oil, although the virgin oil is amazing to bake sweet potato in, and it is amazing in certain recipes. But, you know, to use as a standard cooking oil, the one that's been naturally deodorized is ideal for that. So I've increased the size of that. And of course, it's amazing in, you know, your keto desserts. My daughter makes a lot of raw slices, keto slices and brownies, and we basically fill them up with coconut oil. So those 5 products are available in a box bundle. And I really hope that you will support what we're trying to do. I'm almost emotional, getting tears talking about this, because it just hasn't, we can make a difference, you know, we can make a real difference. And as you know, I spend a lot of time in Bali, and I've developed a deep love and connection for the villages. I don't go to the party towns. I get out in the village. I take my makeup off. I get on the scooter, drive through the rice fields, and there's a sense of home there for me. And so it's important to me that I do what I can to really support the people that need help. So I don't know why I cried with this, but anyway, so I really hope that you'll support us and, you know, buy a box for a friend and share it with people and share this story with people. I'm going to edit this and put it on YouTube. And yeah, I really hope that you learnt a lot today about the truth about fats, how we got to where we are today, where we are right now, and what our vision is for the future, which is, you know, there's some incredible people around the world that are that really, really believe in, the hundreds of millions of farmers, and you times that by 5 at least for their families and even the communities. This is a valuable product, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically, and for ourselves and the planet. So I hope you've learned a thing or two today about it, and why I'm so passionate about it, and why this is important. And not only that, for your neurological health, I set you a challenge of doing a tablespoon a day. That is already within my programs for multiple reasons, for its anti-inflammatory effects, its effect on the brain, your ability to stimulate ketone production. Your ketones naturally just go straight through the roof. And the reason for that is that it's a very unique food source where it will convert immediately into ketones in the body without having to go through other processing. So you're going to get a dramatic rise in ketones. And that's really important for people dealing with neurological degeneration or cancer, where they're really, certain medical conditions where we're really wanting to stimulate ketone production really high. And in terms of weight loss, it's not so as important. But when we're trying to create a medical diet for people to treat illness through nutritional ketosis, you can't beat coconut as a food source in that as well. So there you go. I think that's enough. I got myself a little bit emotional. So thank you for listening and tuning in. And yeah, that's that. I will probably see you next week. I fly to Byron Bay on Tuesday to hang out with 20-something women from our community, to do my retreat there. So I'm going to film something from retreat and share it with you. So I'm really looking forward to that, and really looking forward to seeing those of you that are coming. Just an early warning. My team are going to tell me off because they haven't got online, but just so that you know, I have another retreat coming up in September. So I know there's a wait list. So if you're really interested, if you missed out this time, because it did sell out within 24, 36 hours or something, if you're really interested and you feel pulled to come and do some amazing life-changing work and, do all of that, then maybe email Deb, life coach at Ketogenic Switch, and put your name on the wait list, and we can let you know the details. So lots of love. I will see you later. See you next week from Australia. Bye.